Hello, and welcome to today's Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority meeting. We will begin shortly. We're just going to give people a few more minutes to log on. My name is Monica Mansma, and I'm MDOT's Public Involvement Officer, and I am joining today from Chelsea, Michigan in Washtenaw County. Speakers, please turn your cameras on and make sure you're unmuted when it's your time to speak. So just sit tight and we'll begin in just a few minutes. Thank you. Hello, and welcome to today's Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority meeting. We will begin shortly. We're just going to give people a few more minutes to log on. My name is Monica Mansma, and I'm MDOT's Public Involvement Officer, and I am joining today from Chelsea, Michigan in Washtenaw County. Speakers, please turn your cameras on and make sure you're unmuted when it's your time to speak. So just sit tight and we'll begin in just a few minutes. Thank you. Hello, once again, for those of you just logging on, we're going to get started very shortly. Thank you. Hello, and welcome to today's Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority meeting. We will begin shortly. We're just going to give people a few more minutes to log on. My name is Monica Mansma, and I'm MDOT's Public Involvement Officer, and I am joining today from Chelsea, Michigan in Washtenaw County. Speakers, please turn your cameras on and make sure you're unmuted when it's your time to speak. So just sit tight and we'll begin in just a few minutes. Thank you. Hello, once again, for those of you just logging on, we're going to get started very shortly. Thank you. Hello, and welcome to today's Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority meeting. We will begin shortly. We're just going to give people a few more minutes to log on. My name is Monica Mansma, and I'm MDOT's Public Involvement Officer, and I am joining today from Chelsea, Michigan in Washtenaw County. Speakers, please turn your cameras on and make sure you're unmuted when it's your time to speak. So just sit tight and we'll begin in just a few minutes. Thank you. Hello, once again, for those of you just logging on, we're going to get started very shortly. Thank you. Hello, and welcome to today's Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority meeting. We will begin shortly. We're just going to give people a few more minutes to log on. My name is Monica Mansma, and I'm MDOT's Public Involvement Officer, and I am joining today from Chelsea, Michigan in Washtenaw County. Hello, and welcome to today's meeting. I think it's 1:05, and I think we can begin. Once again, my name is Monica Mansma, and I'm the Public Involvement Officer for the Michigan Department of Transportation. And I just would like to say thank you and welcome to all of you who are joining us today.
Thank you, Monica. My name is Mike Nystrom. I am the chairman of the Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority, and I would like to welcome all of our participants and guests here today to our February 3rd meeting. I am here in Okemos, Michigan, which is in Ingham County, and I would like to take just a moment to allow our other authority member, Tony, to introduce himself and announce where he's at.
Once again, my name is Monica
good afternoon,
Mansma, and I'm the Public Involvement
I'm Tony
Officer
England,
for the
and
Michigan
I'm
Department
Superior
of
Township,
Transportation.
which is
And
in
I just would like
Washtenaw
to
County,
say
Michigan.
thank you and welcome to
all right. So just for a moment, I want to give a reminder of a few of the items that I feel are important for those folks that are on our meeting today. First of all, the responsibility of the authority, and then kind of outline of the public comment that will happen at the end of our meeting. Obviously, we're in unique times with these types of meetings, and so the public comment is important to us. We know that many of you have already reached out to us, and we have seen several comments already today and appreciate those comments. We are not a question and answer board. board. This is not a period for question and answer during public comment. So we will not be responding to questions. If there is information that you're interested in, we do put a good amount of information that is available to us up on our website, and that is available publicly for your review, which might help you to answer some of your questions to us. But to start with our responsibility, as the Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority is still relatively new and its role is not always clear, I want to explain again the charge of this board. The legislation that created this authority is very clear, that our board will review and oversee the construction, maintenance, and operation of utility tunnel beneath the Straits of Mackinac. We are not a regulatory or permitting agency, and we do not determine whether or not a tunnel should be built. Our purview is limited to ensuring that the tunnel, if properly permitted, is built and operated safely and efficiently. So then moving on to the public comment, we understand that all aspects of this project are of great interest to many people, and they wish to have their voices heard. We will take public comments at the end of this meeting. Just a reminder, this is a comment period, and we will not be answering questions, as I mentioned earlier. We created an online comment form and included a link to that in our notice for this meeting. All of the comments gathered by 11 a.m. today were compiled and provided to us prior to the meeting. We have also included the comment form link in the chat function of the YouTube and live stream broadcasts of this meeting. We will have staff read as many of those as time allows at the end of this meeting. In any case, all comments received will be included in the public record of this meeting. So with that, we will move on in our agenda, and we have that shared on the screen here for everyone to see. Tony, I would ask for approval of the agenda. You're muted, Tony.
Thank you. I move that we approve the agenda.
Support. And so since we only have 2 members right now, I will ask for a vote of the 2 of us. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, I will ask for approval of the minutes from nearly a year ago, March 6th, 2020. The meeting minutes were distributed and made public. So Tony, I would ask for a motion of support of those minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Support. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. So our goal here, starting on our business at hand, is to be completely transparent while also protecting the public interest, which is our purview under the law. So we have a lot of information to go through here today. With that, there have been a number of legal issues that have happened during the course of the last 11 months. And so I will ask Ray Howe, our Attorney General representative, to come on the screen and to unmute and to give us an overview of some of the proceedings as it relates to the authority. Ray, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman Nystrom. As you already indicated what the functions are and the role of the Straits Corridor Authority, so too is that the role of the authority in these Public Service Commission meetings. On last April, Enbridge filed an application for authority to replace and relocate a segment of its Line 5 into a tunnel beneath the Straits, after which numerous parties have moved to intervene based on their various interests in the application or the permit application being granted or denied. Those entities would include environmental groups, numerous environmental groups, various tribal governments, the Attorney General, the Michigan Labor District Council, the Michigan National Propane Gas Association. And on August 5th, the authority filed a petition to intervene in these proceedings. On behalf of the authority, we indicated that Enbridge, that we have a direct interest in ensuring that all Public Service Commission standards have been met for the permit being granted to Enbridge. And our role is, as you discussed, to protect the public and to ensure that the design and the specifications and the structure are the highest quality as can be. Following that, there hasn't been that much movement, but there was. Enbridge filed a motion in limine to define what the scope of the proceedings would be and determine what evidence may or may not come in. And all the parties briefed that, and the administrative law judge in October made a determination that the scope of the project would consider the construction of the tunnel, because the tunnel is the housing in which the relocated Line 5 would be placed. And so it was concerned, wanted testimony on leak prevention and the materials that would be used and so on. So it also, but it did deny other interveners' motions to consider the effects of greenhouse gases and the need for petroleum-based products in the future. Some interveners appealed that decision and went up to the Public Service Commission. And during that period of time, in December, the governor and the Department of Natural Resources issued a notice revoking the 1953 easement that runs along the bottomlands that Enbridge is currently using to transport its product. And lawsuits followed, both filed by Enbridge and also by the governor and the attorney general. The Public Service Commission determined that in light of these new events that the administrative law judge should reconsider the Enbridge's motion in limine to define the scope and what evidence should be permissible throughout these proceedings. And the parties have briefed that. We have oral argument this Friday to see what, if any, different conclusion the ALJ would arrive at. And also on December 21st, the administrative law judge issued a revised scheduling order. As I said, the hearing is going to be this Friday on the motion. The ruling's expected sometime at the end of the month. During the month of March, there would be possible appeals by one side or the other. The written testimony of the experts, which would include the authorities, consultants, Dr. Mooney and Dan Cooper, that is due by May 18th, and they will provide written testimony concerning their review of the plans, the designs, and opinions they may have about those. And then throughout the summer, there would be opportunities for rebuttal. The administrative law judge decision is expected sometime in late October or early November. Then there's an opportunity for either parties to any of the parties to file an appeal. And so it's likely that a Public Service Commission decision on Enbridge's application, it's not likely before beginning of next year, early next year at the earliest. Any questions?
Tony, do you have any questions of Ray?
I do a little bit. Now, does that decision have to come down prior to any beginning of the tunnel construction?
Yes, that is correct. Both in the statute and in the tunnel agreement itself, Enbridge is responsible for obtaining approval on all necessary permits, and the Public Service Commission, the ability to get approval to relocate the portion of its line into a tunnel is one of those permits. And so, well, different question, Member England. their Army Corps of Engineer and the Eagle Department. Eagle just issued a permit allowing for the construction of the tunnel, but the authority's still waiting for the Army Corps of Engineer to issue its decision. Both permits are necessary.
Understood. Thank you.
Anything else, Tony?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you, Ray. That's a very, very good report. Appreciate it. So next on our agenda, we have a couple consultant contracts that have been implemented over the course of the last 11 months. And I think it's helpful to explain openly the situation with these contracts. Under the purview of the authority is an appropriation of state funds that was approved by the legislature in 2018. Those state dollars are available to the authority for support services. And I think it's important for folks to understand that overseeing the design, construction, operation, maintenance of a tunnel is not something that any one person is an expert at. And so we as an authority, do rely on folks such as Mike Mooney, who is our tunnel expert, such as Dan Cooper, who is our pipeline expert, to give us input based on their knowledge and experience in certain areas of this tunnel construction, design, operation, maintenance. And so within that context, it has been discussed with our representatives from MDOT that we do not have the available state support necessary to give us as authority members complete guidance on permit reviews, for example. We could lean on our experts such as Mike Mooney. We could lean on those folks at MDOT, but at the same time, they are also required to give us other types of expert analysis, and that analysis at times can be very in-depth. And so we felt that it was probably of value to us as authority members to know the ins and outs of these permits that were being submitted, and know that we as an authority were being these permits were being reviewed and analyzed properly. And so we use the process that is in place for state contracts such as MDOT to take advantage of the appropriation that's available to us. Each of these two contracts are for under $250,000. The next one is for structural design. MDOT is under tremendous pressure with the significant amount of money that is being spent by the department on fixing Michigan's bridges and roadways, where the staff was not available to us to give us the in-depth analysis that we might possibly need. And so we decided to reach out to a consultant to give us that expert advice to be focused for us as an authority. And with that, I will ask Ryan Mitchell to come on camera and unmute. Ryan is our representative at MDOT, and I will ask him to just fill in the blanks on anything that I might have missed there, Ryan.
Thank you, Chairman Nystrom. Yeah, Ryan Mitchell, and I'm attending the meeting today from the city of DeWitt in Clinton County, Michigan. You characterized it correctly, Chairman Nystrom, and for your information as well, Member England. The first agenda item related to administrative contracts is an extension of the state's limited resources to ensure proper due diligence in evaluating submittals from Enbridge. this consultant, McMillen Jacobs, Michigan Incorporated, is supporting the design review, providing tunnel engineering expertise independent of design development, and focusing on the technical aspects of design as it relates to the permit application, providing additional staff resources and expertise to support other affected agencies as well. Any questions on that in addition to that?
When did they come on board? I'm just curious.
Good question.
I have their contract right here.
McMillen Jacobs contract was executed.
Was it June?
Pardon me just a minute.
It looks like August 10th of 2020.
Yep, August 10th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ray. That's correct.
And the CDM contract was about the same time then?
That one was October.
Okay,
That one was October, Tony.
okay, thank you.
The second one was mid-October, late October.
Correct.
Ryan, just dive into that structural one just a little bit for a little more in-depth explanation, please.
Sure. Yes, again, thanks, Chairman Nystrom. This contract to CDM Smith Michigan, Inc. and subconsultant Benish of Michigan, Inc. Is for structural design and engineering consultant services, similar to the previous item, and that it provides needed extension of staff resources for the effort of ensuring a robust review of the project specifications. This contract in particular focuses on structural design, provides the state needed expertise in Michigan concrete design and construction requirements and Michigan conditions for concrete construction. Not that wasn't available to us with other resources. Again, very few staff available to support the project. And it, as you said, Chairman Nystrom, we want to ensure a thorough review and proper due diligence to ensure that the quality is at the industry standard, state of practice.
As I understand it, the authority had a voice in setting the specifications, so it was through this contract is the way we did that?
Well, no, member England, actually the members of the state team, including worked in coordination with the design team to develop, jointly develop project specifications, and that's a later agenda item. This team did review those, particularly the structural team. So yeah, in a manner of speaking, that's correct. They did evaluate those specifications. They didn't work jointly. They were an independent review of those specifications and provided comment, all of which were addressed.
Thank you.
You know, Ryan, I think you made an excellent point, and maybe we can, Tony, what might be helpful is we can ask Mike Mooney the question, because he has alluded to it in conversations with me in the past. Michigan's geology is very unique, and so having experts who understand concrete here in Michigan, I think is very important. We have some great resources available to us through MDOT, Ryan Mitchell being one of them, and others in the structural area. But because we have a road and bridge program that has ramped up significantly, our bonding program just in the last year and a half or so, all of the resources are being used to put those projects in place. And so since we had this appropriation available to us, since MDOT already had the process of contract procurement in place and available to us, Ryan reached out and said, I really do think that we should take advantage of this situation of the resources being available to us and get the best possible experts in there to look at this for us. And so that's what we've done with these. I think, Ryan, do you have any more to add to that?
Just that, in addition to myself, Chairman Nystrom and Member England, MDOT's most expert structural engineer, our chief bridge engineer, Matt Chenoweth, also the Bureau of Bridges and Structures director, personally participated in the review of the structural design and the structural specifications. And it was really the CDM Smith contract was to support Matt in his review. He was the final word on the comments that went in from that consultant, and he participated in every review that was conducted. But he, again, to your point, he manages a bureau of several hundred staff and a program of thousands of structures in the state of Michigan. And so the additional resources were to support and ensure adequate due care and due diligence was performed in review of the project document submitted.
Well said, Ryan and Tony. We were lucky to have their input at the level that we did, but I think this additional level of support was needed, and as an authority member, I am very appreciative of it.
Yeah, I am too. I think it sounds like a great idea.
So we will then move through these items. I think since they are already working contracts, I think the appropriate measure here, Tony, would be that you and I accept these contracts that are in place, and we move on. Obviously, there were challenges with public meetings through this pandemic year, and there were several times that Ryan and Ray Howard and I talked that, boy, we would like to be able to have a meeting, but under the appropriations process and the contract procurement process of MDOT, we were allowed to move forward at this level under $250,000. And so I think accepting these, Tony, is the proper course of action.
I agree, and I accept these contracts.
All right, sounds good. Ryan, we will move on then. Thank you for being on. I know we'll bring you back at the end of our agenda here. Up next, we have some reports from Enbridge. I believe Mike Begale is going to be giving a piece of this, but it may be Peter as well. I'm not sure. So we'll go from there to turn it over to the Enbridge folks. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Nystrom. This is Peter Holren. I'm Director of Government Relations for Enbridge, and I'm coming to you from my home in Northern Virginia today. Though I wish we were able to meet in person. It's been over a year since we have shared the same room together, and we're able to converse in face-to-face. So hopefully, as the governments and our people get the pandemic under control, we'll be able to get back to in-person meetings sooner than later. Enbridge continues to work and look forward to work very closely with the authority, with both you, Chairman Nystrom, and you, Dr. Englund, and the soon-to-be hopefully announced new member of the authority, as we continue to move forward with the Great Lakes Tunnel project. The project is one that Enbridge continues to be very committed to. We believe it is an essential project that will not only continue to make a safe pipeline safer, but it enhances the protections of the waters of the Great Lakes, a value that we believe is shared between the state of Michigan, people of Michigan, and Enbridge. But also, it's important that it will enhance the operation of our Line 5 pipeline and allow for the continued supply of necessary fuels that every day are driving the economies of the Great Lake region, whether it's in Ohio or Indiana, Pennsylvania, or across to our neighbors and friends in Canada and Ontario, Quebec. And more importantly, and probably most importantly to this proceeding and this meeting, to the people of Michigan. The pipeline, the system of pipelines that Enbridge operates and others operate throughout the United States and throughout North America provide that valuable fuel that is driving the economies and will be necessary as we emerge from this pandemic and our economies continue to open and become robust and healthy once again. And so we're proud to be part of that future. We're proud to be modernizing our pipeline systems, and we're proud to be undertaking a engineering feat that probably will not be seconded in any of our lifetimes, and that is the Great Lakes Tunnel Project. Since we last met nearly a year ago, Enbridge has continued to provide its monthly status reports on the tunnel project to the authority. We have continued to meet the objectives and obligations, milestones that are spelled out in the tunnel project agreement, which was signed between the state of Michigan and Enbridge back in December of 2018. We also have continued to provide updates to the communities that will be most directly affected in St. Ignace and Mackinac City, but also the communities throughout the UP, throughout the upper lower peninsula and across the state. Communities that have questions about the Great Lakes Tunnel Project, communities that also understand that the Great Lakes Tunnel Project and the transportation pipelines that Enbridge operates are essential for the economy of Michigan. One of the new aspects that we just wanted to highlight for you is we've started a new quarterly newsletter that will be distributed free of charge to the communities, again, most impacted or eventually most impacted in Mackinac City and St. Ignace. It's our effort to keep them abreast of what is happening with the tunnel project, what they can expect. And again, they won't replace any direct outreach to the communities, the elected leaders, and also the citizens. But we believe the tunnel telegram will be an added addition that we hope that the people of the Straits area will not only find valuable, but enjoy reading. So with that introduction, Chairman Nystrom and Dr. Englund, I'd like to turn it over to really the person that is driving this project, Michael Begal, the project director of the Great Lakes Tunnel Project, and he'll provide an overview of where the project resides.
Peter, just for ease of administration after the meeting, we do have to have, and I apologize, I think we need it from Ray as well when he comes back on, but Northern Virginia doesn't follow our requirements of our state rule. We need city, county, and state, please.
So I'm in Falls Church, Virginia, the city of Falls Church, Virginia. It does not have a county, and that again is in Virginia.
Perfect. Thank you, Peter. Welcome, Michael.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Nystrom and Dr. Englund. I appreciate this opportunity to be able to update you on the tunnel project. And like someone said earlier, it's been almost a year since we last updated you on where we're at. And I'll tell you that over the last 12 months or so, I'm really happy to be able to tell you where we're at and the progress we've made and the advancements on the tunnel project, both on the technical front, on the permitting and regulatory front, on contracting front that we put in place and progressed over the last year. Development of the project specifications, which talked a little bit about earlier. Ryan and you and folks talked about, and I'll get into some of those details later. Some of the interactions, discussions we've had with third parties around utilities in our tunnel. Very exciting stuff. Actually, I'm going to hand it over to Peter later after I'm done, and he's going to give you some more details around the third party discussions we've been having. And so let me start out with permitting, because I think you all know that's kind of the linchpin for a lot of things that are going to happen downstream. And as you discussed earlier, we've got to have our permits from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, from Eagle, and from the Michigan Public Service Commission in terms of the pipeline relocations prior to the start of construction. So during last year, a major focus that we had on the project, the entire team, was around the permitting and the Public Service Commission work. And so back in April, in that month, we submitted both our applications to Eagle, to the Corps of Engineers, and to the Michigan Public Service Commission. And at that time, shortly after that, we provided you all copies of it. So let me give you a little bit more detail then around these applications. We put together a single application called a joint permit application, a JPA, that was submitted both to the Army Corps and to Eagle to address waters of the U.S. I'll get technical for a minute. Waters of the U.S., wetlands, waters of the U.S. navigable waters, Great Lakes bottomlands, protected species, and cultural resources. And so that's sort of the depth and breadth of what they were about. And in the same month last year in April, we submitted application to the Public Service Commission requesting an order for replacing the dual pipelines in the Straits with a single pipeline encased in a tunnel. In addition, we applied to Eagle for a national pollution discharge elimination permit. That went along in April, along with our JPA that I talked about a minute ago. And I guess one of the messages I want to give everybody, and I'm going to end the discussion of permits on a bright note, but what's also really important to note is that all of the agencies involved, the Corps, Eagle, the Service Commission, I will tell you, in 40 plus years of my experience building large, complex capital projects, what went into the permit development on our side, the amount of detail and rigor that we put into it, and commensurately what the Corps and Eagle and the Service Commission have done on their side, I will tell you, has been commensurately rigorous, compliant in terms of all the rules and regs, the data request and information request, the public meetings and hearings that they held out of due diligence. All of that I think was about as rigorous and commendable as I've seen in my career. So it's obviously a two-way street on the application of these permits and on the regulatory side with the Service Commission. But I will tell you, it was a very, very positive interaction on both sides. So back to Eagle for a minute. I guess the bright news is that last Friday we reached an important milestone on the project with the approval of the two Eagle permits, or the submission of them. The NIPI's permit was effective on Monday, this Monday. And the other permit is conditional upon Enbridge's review of it over the next 2 or 3 weeks, countersigning, and then submission back to them, whereupon they'll issue the permit. And that's a significant milestone for us. It's one of the foundational pieces that we need to demonstrate our environmental stewardship around what we're doing with building this tunnel. premise behind it in terms of why we're building the tunnel. And it's a great milestone that we're very, very proud of. So what I'm going to do next, if Monica could put the first slide up, I guess it is, that I want to talk through. That's it. Perfect. Thank you, Monica. So what I want to do I'm going to use this as a talking tool, and it's to do a couple things. Obviously, to talk on the top half of this slide is detailing the deliverables that are called out in the agreement with the authority, our agreement with the authority on deliverables that are required in that agreement. The bottom half is highlighting the key activities and milestones that the project team has progressed over the last year or so. But just as important is I'm going to try to give you a time history perspective of both the deliverables and the activities, because in fact, what those deliverables represent they're the foundations of what we took and ran with downstream to produce designs and tunnel specs and all of those other kind of activities and deliverables. So let me start out on the top on the left. I'm going to talk about just a few things briefly. The preliminary engineering and activities plan that we provided about a year ago. The importance of that is it's what we submitted to you, to the authority, and you reviewed, commented on, concurred with, and it listed all of the things that I'm going to talk about in the next 10 minutes or so around what are the activities that we're going to do this year, for example, to progress the tunnel project. So it talked about conducting the geotechnical program, developing code data, geotech data reports, baselines, doing risk assessments, developing joint project specifications with the authority, all of those key elements. And so we submitted that, you accepted it last year, about a year ago. And that was very important because it was sort of the roadmap that we in the project used as part of our project management plan to move downstream and progress the project. Similarly, last year we submitted one of the requirements, one of the deliverables was what did this joint specification development team look like? That is part of the agreement that we would put that team together. And that was critical. And you all have already talked about the members of it, and Brian gave a little bit of more flavor to it. Obviously, that team was put together where it consisted of Enbridge's owner's engineer, our design agency, Arrow, the authority, Dr. Mooney, and Ryan Mitchell's team. I'm going to talk a little later about now what that team had done in terms of the actual development of the specs, but that was important because the point I really want to make is that was the sort of stake in the ground where we established who all the players were, understood at that point what the expectations of both the authority and MDOT was, and it set up the playground, I would say, for how we were going to interact and collaborate, not only in developing the joint specifications, but in all of the interactions and collaborations that have happened over the last year, where the authority and MDOT has helped us, develop specs and progress this project. So it was an important milestone for us. After that, we had a milestone or deliverable to show you what the RFP looked like that we were going to go out to market on for both the design agency and our construction piece of the equation. We submitted that, and you guys looked at it, approved it, and you can see down on the bottom in January of 2020, we put contracts in place in accordance with those RFPs, which was a rigorous competitive process where we bid both the design and the construction pieces of it with multiple companies, international companies, world experts all around the planet, and ended up in January of 2020, as you can see on the bottom here, to put contracts in place with both our design firm, Arup, and our construction company, which is the Great Lakes Tunnel Constructors. It's a partnership between Obayashi and JD. Obayashi is a world-class tunnel builder, and JD is a construction company based in Michigan with extensive experience in both tunnel construction and pipeline construction. So we've had those permits in place for the last year now, and we're working through those activities that I'm going to talk about in a minute. So if I back up, what else happened in 2020 after we produced the first set of deliverables? As it was outlined in the engineering plan, we began our geotechnical program. We finished the onshore and the nearshore program last summer in July. After that, we embarked on the deepwater core bore program. We finished that right around Christmas time last year, a little before that. And the important thing I guess I want to say about that is those deliverables that came out of our geotechnical investigation program were what was able to facilitate generating the geotechnical data report, which was not only a deliverable to you that we put forth in December of 2019, right after we completed the last of the core bores, but it's the foundation of not only defining the key parameters of the tunnel, the key working parameters of the tunnel boring machine, and also the linchpin for the detailed design that we had to embark on after that set of geotechnical investigations and generation of the code data reports. So where we're at after, and I've already talked about issuing the permits in April, and the fact that the good news is last Friday we did get the Eagle permits. What we spent the rest of the year on in 2020 and where we're at this point in time is generating the detailed design that is derivative from what we're dealing with on the geotechnical side of the equation, the soil conditions that we've got under the tunnel, and then all of the elements around how that geotechnical world not only plays into the design of the tunnel and the parameters around that, but also the design of the tunnel boring machine, because that's sort of the heart of the construction project. So, and the last thing on this slide before I go to the next one is that we provided you the joint specs, the tunnel specs that the team had put together over the last 6 months. I think we gave you that just probably a week or so ago. And as Ryan mentioned, that team with Dr. Mooney, with the MDOT folks, and the Enbridge side of the team really went through an amazing amount of rigor and a very rigorous process in terms of developing the specs, commenting, going back and forth around making sure that they were comprehensive, that they were compatible and compliant with codes and standards and regs and all of those kind of technical things. And again, I'll tell you, similar to what went on in the generation and the approval and the reviews of our permits, this was a very rigorous process. So I'm very comfortable and very confident that that tunnel specification package that we submitted and that was jointly developed with you guys is a very rigorous quality product. Monica, if you go to the next slide, please. Am I still okay? There we go. This is just to show you the context on the upper and lower peninsula. The dotted line on the left is the tunnel, and on the right is the Mackinac Bridge. I'm not going to dwell on that. I just wanted to kind of put the logistics in the upper and lower in perspective. So if you go to the next slide, then I'll kind of get into a bit more discussion on technical side. So as I said, we embarked mid-year last year on doing geotechnical investigations onshore and on the near shore. Ultimately, throughout the summer and into the winter months, we were able to complete our deep water geotechnical program. So what you're looking at here, these two views, the top view is a plan view, and it works from the right-hand side to the left, right hand being the south and the left hand being the north. So what it's showing you is the tunnel profile, and what those mile markers are, those points and those X's are where we did the actual core bores. You can see on the far right on the onshore drills that we did, and then you can see along the lake where we did the near shore and the deep water. And the importance of that is that if you look at the center of that top picture, you'll see more of a cluster of the little X's. And the reason for that is this wasn't a random or arbitrary selection of what we were going to perform in terms of our investigation campaign. It was where, based on what we had in terms of current knowledge and where we wanted to make sure that we had as much detail around Mother Nature as possible, those clusters in the middle, which is also, when I show you when I go to this picture on the bottom, is also how we ultimately determined the profile and the depth of the tunnel. And those core bores in the center that were very critical, because that's the point when you hear people talk about this is a really complex, unique tunnel project. One of the things that makes it unique is it's probably maybe the highest pressure that a tunnel's ever been built under, or at least it's in the realm of the top one or two. So when you look at the bottom elevation view, what that's showing you, again from south to north, is what the profile of that tunnel is actually going to look like. And it says it's exaggerated, and we did that on purpose just so that you could get a flavor of what the geological formations down on the legend are in terms of the top part on the overburden, and then what we've got in terms of solid rock and the different types of rock formations, the basic fundamental geotechnical information. Then it shows you the profile of how we're going to actually mine this tunnel, how we're going to construct it. And you'll see, I know it's kind of small print, but you'll see that from the south side, for example, as it goes from 60 to 70 feet below, all the way to 250 feet or more at the apex of that route, and then back up to the north side. It's a significant amount of coverage below the lake bottom that this tunnel is going to be mined through. And obviously that's fundamental to the whole premise of encapsulating our pipeline in a tunnel in order to be virtually environmentally, risk-free. Now I'll stop there. I'm talking a lot here. I'll stop and ask at this point whether you, Chairman Nystrom, or Dr. England have any questions at this point.
Michael, just one simple one, just based on what you were just explaining. It sounds as though, based on your explanation of the lower graph chart to picture, the plan would be to start on the southern launch portal?
Yes, sir. That's correct, Chairman. And I'm going to get to the next slide, but I guess the other thing that's probably obvious or intuitive is that when you look at that bottom picture, and then you kind of imagine, I don't know, a couple thousand pages of a geotechnical data report that we produced after this investigation last winter. That's the data and the information that we use to not only develop, well, how are we going to route this tunnel in terms of profile and depth, but also, like, what did that mean in terms of how it intrinsically ties into the design of the tunnel, and probably more importantly, the design of the tunnel boring machine, because that machine, that singular machine, is what gets you from point A to B, from south to north, over those little over 4 miles of distance. And so I'm certain it's obvious to you guys, but that interrelationship between, you know, what I like to call Mother Nature and what's down there below the Straits of Mackinac, how we devise our designs around boring this tunnel, and then how do we design the machine that's going to accomplish that? All of those things put together. And I will say, talking back to the specifications, that this team, this joint team, the authority and MDOT and the Enbridge folks put together, that's sort of foundational also to how those specifications tie in and are intrinsically tied into the design, and some of the key parameters that somebody mentioned earlier around the structural elements of that design, so that we can be assured that when this thing is complete and commissioned and turned over to the authority, that the specs that drove the design and the development of the TBM parameters is something that we, all along the course of that and even during execution, we have followed and used as our technical roadmap. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Could I just ask a question? You put some dimensions on the chart there, but there's not a dimension between the pipeline and the top of the point of Cheyenne formation. How far below that overburden is that pipeline?
The tunnel or the pipeline?
The pipeline, the distance between the pipeline and the bottom of the overburden. I mean, how far are you missing that point? I'm just curious.
Yeah, maybe it can't be read, but at the deepest point, at the point where it forms the radius at the bottom, that's 250 plus feet below the lake bed surface, which the pipeline is resting on, obviously.
Yeah. So
we're always. I didn't mean to interrupt you, sir. We're always 60 to 250 plus feet.
Okay.
Below. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you. What would happen if you went into the overburden?
What would happen if I went into the, well, it's a little bit of a complex story. Maybe when I get to the TBM discussion a little bit, I can help you on it.
I'm sure you're confident that it's all below that, and I'm not really worried about it. But if there was some miscalculation or something that, you know, maybe the peak didn't occur exactly where you thought it did. Maybe I was just wondering, it wouldn't really compromise the tunnel going through the overburden, would it? I'm just curious.
Well, no, I don't think so. But I will tell you, if you look at my sheepskin, it's geared towards physics, and I'm not, that one. Your first comment is that totally accurate. We won't ever be in that position. That's the whole purpose of doing this entire campaign, to figure out what our route. Maybe Dr. Mooney will address it when he talks about all of the work that he's done in the spec development and the overview of the design. And if not, I will tell you, I'll take the question back in-house, get my tunnel gurus to answer.
You'll have to forgive me. I'm a geophysicist, so those interest me. But very fine. I'm sorry.
No, it's a great question. We'll get it answered. Believe me.
You know, Michael, I think it's also important to note too, though, that one part of this in your previous slide that gives me comfort is the number of soil borings that you did during the course of the year that give you this indication of these different various sedimentation levels, whatever you might call them, there thousands of soil borings, correct?
No, thousands of core bores?
Yes.
No, they weren't thousands, Chairman. It was a much smaller number, and that's why I made the point along that top profile that you're looking at in the blue. Those actually represent the actual core bores that we performed.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, and again, that's why I wanted to make the point. You brought up a very astute point that that the selection of where the location of those is really, really critical. Because if you, and I will tell you that strategically between our design firm and tunnel experts and lots of different people, we ultimately modified where we were going to do some of those core bores once we commenced the operations, because of what we were seeing on the right-hand side of that for some of the deep water work, and then saying, wait a minute here, we need to readjust, put more of them where you see that cluster in the center, because that's the point we wanted to make sure that we really had a good handle on. Number one, because you know that the deeper you go, the higher the pressure. What we're talking about on this project and why it's very unique is at the deepest point, you're talking around 17 bar, which translates to maybe around 250 pounds per square inch. That's significant. And so both for the operation of the TBM and all of the parameters around what we would have to do for the maintenance of the TBM under these kind of pressures, the actual design of the TBM, because a lot of it's just a large, complex piece of rotating engineered equipment, but because of those pressures, we had to custom design a lot of the internals of that machine to withstand that kind of pressure. That's why, long-winded answer, that's why for that number of select core bores, we put that pattern together where we thought they were the most opportunistically important to us.
Well, I guess this is why we rely on the experts, because we are naive in a lot of ways. I guess when I was saying that number, we've seen pictures of them on the boat, and they're probably cut into sections. So when you did your core bores, they obviously can't bring up hundreds of feet of soil and sedimentation and rocks.
Exactly.
You have seen
authority. And that's a great point. And let me springboard on that. What you're referring to is absolutely correct, and that's what we have in our warehouse up there in the UP. And there are thousands of those samples that represent what we retrieve from the core bores, and a portion of those what we sent to the laboratories to do the analytics on what all that material was. And that's a very good point. It's very critical. That program to produce the geotechnical data report, it wasn't just showing pictures of thousands of rocks. It had a tremendous amount of analytical work and laboratory analysis behind it to be able to ultimately tell us what that little legend down there means around, where is solid rock, where might there be a little bit different formations like some cobble and things, because we had to know that for the design of the project, the detail, and to make sure we were designing the right kind of TBM to handle those conditions.
Sure.
So,
well, that's been very helpful, Michael. I'm sorry, we're learning as we go here, so I think it's been a good conversation. So we'll keep you moving.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Tony.
As far as I understand, there are no active faults in the area.
Say that again, sir, doctor.
I just wanted to make the point that, as I understand it, there are no active faults in the area.
That's correct. That's my understanding. Yes, sir. Okay, if there's no other questions, this slide, thank you, Monica, by the way. This slide, I know I painted a picture of a complex machine, and this doesn't exactly. I just use this as sort of something to get my mind working. But let me go back to some of the parameters I talked about earlier. This machine is around, this tunnel boring machine is around 500 feet in length. So, I think played some kind of football or whatever in high school a couple hundred years ago, and I equate that to lengths of a football field. So you can imagine, not only are we talking a machine, very complex piece of engineered equipment that's 500 feet long, but it's 21 feet, fundamentally 21 feet in diameter. So that the interior diameter, internal diameter of this tunnel will be 21 feet. And that's important to know, because when I talk a little bit about, and Peter talks about third-party utilities and whatever, obviously our pipeline is going to have lots of room to be stuffed into that tunnel. And you know, that dimension of it is not only important to be able to accommodate third-party utilities and whatever, it was also important in the design of this tunnel boring machine because of the pressures I mentioned earlier. It has to be able to accommodate maintenance workers in the time that we're mining and tunneling this tunnel, to be able to work on, you know, various parts of this machine, because it's just a piece of rotating equipment, and they'll have to go in and do normal maintenance on the cutter heads and things like that. And so that diameter also facilitates the ability to transport workers during the construction of the tunnel itself. So and the other operative point here that I'm sure Dr. Mooney could elaborate on forever, and it was a critical part of the specification development, is the liners that this machine puts up, I'll call it, as it's mining, as it's tunneling, this 1 foot thick concrete liner, which is basically the encapsulation, or that is the tunnel boundary. And obviously it's very critical that how that is spec'd out and how that is designed and how it is made sure when we construct it that it follows that spec and those design parameters is very, very for the integrity of the tunnel. And that's why I emphasize how much rigor the joint spec team put together in some of these specs and the structural specs, I'd say, like this particularly, because that's a critical element not only of how we build this tunnel and the interaction with the TBM and putting those liners in place, but also the integrity of the tunnel itself. So that's kind of my speaking points on that. 500 feet, 21 foot diameter. And the next slide, if Monica goes to that, it's just a cutaway I wanted to show you. And this isn't our machine because, you know, we haven't built it yet, but it's sort of a representative of the kind of what do I call it, slurry tunnel boring machine that we have evolved to and actually completed a measurable amount of the details around that design. And when I say that, GLTC, our construction company, has worked with Herrenknecht, the TBM manufacturer in Germany that was selected to manufacture this machine ultimately. GLTC and Enbridge and Herrenknecht in Germany, we've done a significant amount of work over the last 6 months as this design has evolved, as the tunnel specs became clear to us on what this machine had to look like. This picture is just simply show you that if you visualize that's you're looking at a cutaway of a machine that has a diameter of say 21 feet, you just extenuate it, you know, 500 feet, you know, in your mind lengthwise. A lot of this machine is dealing with the hydraulic motors and all of the mechanical equipment that it takes to drive the cutter head, to facilitate divers coming into doing you know, free air and mixed gas kind of maintenance work, things like that. I wasn't trying to dazzle you or impress you as much as to let you know that unlike you might see in the movies on you know, some of these machines that in the sci-fi movies, this is a complex piece of equipment. The integration of the tech specs, the detailed design, and ultimately when we complete the design of the shop drawings themselves and start manufacturing this, it all fits together in order to make sure that we're we're going to build a tunnel in accordance with the way we say we are. So I think that's my last slide. I'll stop again and hush up and see if you have any questions, Chairman or Dr. England.
I don't at this point, and I really thank you. It is an impressive undertaking.
Thank you. I agree. I'm proud to be part of it. And as Peter said in his intro, we really believe in this. This project is moving ahead. I've been building projects for all my career, and this one is going to be very, very exciting. And in the end, we are going to have something we turn over to the authority that does everything we say it's going to do. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Peter. He's going to elaborate a little bit around our interactions, discussions with third-party utilities. And I thank you, Chairman Nystrom and Dr. England, very much for allowing me to give you this overview.
Michael, thank you so much. You did a very nice job of explaining things to a couple neophytes like us. But could I just ask you before you jump off, Michael, just again, where are you at so that we don't have to reach back out to you after the meeting?
Yes, sir. I apologize. I thought I'd mentioned that I'm speaking from my office in Harris County, Houston, Texas.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate the update.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Peter, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I wanted to spend a moment and two other presentations or two other discussions that we have. And actually, I know Michael had mentioned the third parties, and I know it's an agenda item, but if I could ask Monica to skip ahead one slide here. Nope, you were already ahead, so thank you very much. Maybe back one. I apologize, Monica. There we go. I did want to make mention of that we have been approached by a third-party utility company about interest in locating in the tunnel. It has always been contemplated in the discussions that we had with the state of Michigan, and ultimately in the agreements that we signed with the state of Michigan and the tunnel project agreement we've signed with the authority. That there would be that Enbridge would be open to, and that the tunnel design should be such that other third-party utilities could locate in the tunnel if they so desired. We have had interest expressed by several companies, but one that has really pulled forward in more extensive activity between our company and theirs. I'm happy to say that as we have informed the authority in writing that Peninsula Fiber Network based in Marquette, Michigan, has expressed interest, is working with our engineering team to understand how their utilities, their cable, their fiber could be located in the tunnel. Our engineers are working to understand what needs that a fiber company would have, and making certain that the co-location of the various utilities would be safe and doable. And at this point, all indications are that there would be absolutely no issue with co-locating fiber cables for Peninsula in the tunnel. One of the things that is being looked at in the benefits that have always been contemplated around a utility tunnel to house not only a replacement segment for the Line 5 liquids pipeline, but companies such as PFN provides 911 service, emergency response services throughout the majority of the state, and they're looking for redundancy in that system. And providing a conduit by which they can cross with their cables the 4.5 miles of the Straits of Mackinac, and really lowering their expenses around how to site such cables and build out that redundancy is something that will be beneficial, we believe, to all of Michigan and to the safety of the people. So just wanted to quickly mention that for you all and see if there's any questions that Chairman Nystrom, Dr. Englund, you had regarding this.
Tony?
No, I always thought there were going to be lots of possibilities for third and maybe fourth and fifth party interest in the tunnel. So I'm delighted to see it.
I am too, Peter. To me, that's really exciting news. Obviously, protection of the Great Lakes is the top priority of this tunnel, moving it forward. But the opportunities for the citizens of the state of Michigan to have expanded options, if you will, with regard to utilities. This is kind of interesting to me, though. It's a company out of Marquette, so if you can say, are they actually taking their, are they looking to take something actually south out of the UP, or?
Well, yeah, again, what I do know is that PFM has approximately 4,000 miles of fiber throughout Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. What my understanding is, they provide connectivity for the 911 emergency response services throughout the majority of the state. So I think I think I represent correctly that they have fiber throughout the state. What they are looking to do is we understand it, is to provide redundancy to their systems, to provide that assurance and that extra level of safety for the people of Michigan that the 911 emergency response services will be available when needed.
Yeah, I guess that is fantastic, and that should give us all comfort for sure. I guess I always envisioned this as the opportunities would be going north, bringing faster fiber, faster internet service, etc., to the UP, but this one is unique, that it's our first one, and potentially actually bringing something south for that redundancy is interesting. So thank you for that update, Peter.
Yeah, and I would say Enbridge continues to be open to all types of utilities that might come forward, and I might, if I can, speculate, and that's all it would be, is that as the tunnel project continues to be more of a real item and people can envision what exactly the tunnel will look like, we may see more companies come forward and ask us for engineering consults on this.
And I will say to you and the entire team, I'm appreciative that from the beginning, I think it might have been you, Tony, or JR, one of the two of you asked at our very first meeting, will there be opportunities for other utilities? And the fact that you have included these cable trays, the third-party conduit system in the design of the tunnel is very appreciated. So thank you to the entire team.
I appreciate hearing that, Mr. Chairman. And if you will indulge us for a few more minutes, when we last met nearly a year ago, we provided the authority with an update on some of the activities that we have undertaken at the Straits. One of the parallel courses that Enbridge is on is, while we design and build the tunnel, which we are doing as quickly as we believe is safely and possible, but also safely to do. We also understand and appreciate the public concern around the pipes that are currently in the Straits of Mackinac. And so we have enhanced our safety protocols. We have put new programs in place. And if you would indulge us a few more minutes, I'd like to introduce Mike Moeller, who is the director of our Great Lakes operations for our liquid pipeline system. And he can give you an update on some of the new technologies and new programs that we've put in place since we last met, programs that are operating in the Straits of Mackinac today. So, Mike, are you on screen?
I am, from a way of a technology check. Can you hear me?
We see you and we hear you, Mike. Thank you. If you just announce exactly where you're at for us.
Sure. Thanks, Chairman Nystrom and Member England. Mike Moeller, Director of the Great Lakes region for Enbridge, and I'm based in the city of Schererville, Lake County, Indiana. Like Michael Begale's team, my operations team has been very busy since the last time we met in March. And we've continued to add resources, both technological and human, to the monitoring and protection of our pipelines at the Straits. And I'd like to play a short video that describes those resources and, more importantly, gives some video footage of them in use. So Ryan, if you could play the video, that would be great.
And Mike, I understand we're not probably hearing the audio that's on the video, so you may want to just provide a little voiceover as we continue to go through.
Sure. Thanks, Peter. Yes, this is talking about the weather monitoring that does happen through the technology. There's wave height monitoring through the radar signal that is was talked about and described previously. It did show the patrol boats, the red retired Coast Guard boats that go out and circle a large freighter and check its anchors positions. It also showed some screens where we have 4 active cameras, planning for at least 6. Now on the screen is a fast response boat that we purchased last year. We have another one being made as we speak, coming in from Seattle. They're Munson. It has that red thing on front as a water monitor that we would make available for any firefighting needs onshore or on the water to the local emergency responders there. And again, I think one of the other video snippets that you saw showed a bit of a radar screen, and that currently is taking that same radar signal and processing it into ice formation so that we can see where ice is and moving around in the straits live and in real time. That video for everybody listening is available on our Enbridge website there. So if you have time afterwards, hit play and hopefully you can get the voiceover to the video as well.
Mike, I believe that Enbridge actually shared at least a portion of that video with us at our meeting back in March. So we have seen this in full in person. So, but I do appreciate you sharing it again with us. The information is good to keep out there, and it's good to know where that's at for other folks to watch it as well.
Sure, Chairman. What we would have presented in March would have been the on-water boat operations, and what was new in this video was the high-powered and infrared cameras that are mounted around the straits on both sides. They got installed and commissioned in December of this year, or last year, so just a month and a half ago. And as you can see, what we call the Enbridge Maritime Pipeline Protection Program has continued to increase its assurance of making a safe pipeline even safer. Couple things that were not mentioned on that video: the cameras that we have installed each include a xenon searchlight. So that again is something that we would make available to local emergency responders in the need of a search and rescue sort of operation. You know, and again, I think once we get through the pandemic here, we'd be happy to host yourself, Chairman, and Member England, and other stakeholders at the ESMOC, as we call it. And we currently have 2 ESMOCs, one in St. Ignace on the north side of the bridge and one in Mackinac City. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any other questions you may have.
Tony, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I really appreciate what you're doing and showing it to us. But just for others who are listening, I really should point out that we don't really have any control or responsibility for the line 5 as it is now. So just so that we don't get people saying coming to us with concerns about current line 5.
Excellent point, Tony. All right, Mike, thank you very much for coming to our meeting today and sharing your information with us.
Thank you. I'll turn it back over to Peter.
Mr. Chairman and Dr. England, again, thank you for your indulgence and allowing us the opportunity here, inviting us to provide an update to the authority. And that's the end of our presentation. If there are any questions, we'd be happy to field them. And certainly, as has protocol or as we have been practicing, if you think of questions post-meeting, and we'd be certainly open to answering those as well.
Peter, I do have one, I guess, comment. One point has come up to us as authority members. In our conversations, preparing for meetings like this with staff and whatnot, the agreement, the definition of the tunnel, as Tony just pointed out, is really our purview. And I think that we need to have an open understanding of what that tunnel will be end to end. There have been some conversations about that through the permitting process, and I think that's kind of brought it to the forefront of our minds. I think we do have to have a conversation about that. What are we going to inherit as an authority once construction is complete? I've seen renditions with there will be buildings on the site, et cetera. What all is entailed in that? And I think that we need to have a conversation about that openly as we go forward, as this gets designed and developed, to know what that point-to-point really is between us.
I fully understand and appreciate the need, and Enbridge is prepared, and I'll put Mike Bagal on notice, but I believe we represent correctly that we're about 90% on the design. As we have conversations with third-party utilities and as we finish the design, there are still changes that are being made to both the south and north portals, as well as internal designs regarding the tunnel. Once they are at a completed stage, I think we have an obligation, but also we have a desire to bring that forward and would ask the authority for a meeting, and we'd be happy to present those final designs to you so there's a full understanding before we move any further with the project as to what Enbridge is contemplating. But Mike Bagal, do you have anything to add to that?
Peter, no, you said it well, but I will say that we are at the 90% design completion, detailed design of both the tunnel and the pipeline. We're moving towards, full completion. We're doing some optimization. And I will also tell you that Dr. Mooney and other folks from both the authority and the MDOT have been not only involved in the joint development of the specifications, but in the overview of our design process as well. And so we'll be able to at any time in the near future, we could lay out what you just said, Chairman, so that end to end comprehensively what we're talking about when we hand you the keys.
Fantastic, Michael. That's all it's just a question that's kind of come up in our conversations. And I know you guys have a lot of that you're talking about, and at times we probably seem pretty naive, but just a point that has come up amongst us, and we wanted to make sure that you were hearing us as an authority as well officially, and keep up the good work on moving this thing forward safely and efficiently. And I appreciate your time today, gentlemen.
And thank you both.
All right, with that, we'll keep our agenda moving forward. Our representative, our expert tunnel representative for the authority, Mike Mooney, who's been very, very busy since our last meeting. Mike, I'll ask you to come on camera and unmute and give us an update as to your activities.
You bet, Chairman Nystrom. Dr. England, just hope you can see me and hear me.
Yep.
I'm reporting to you today from Riverside County in California, the city of La Quinta. I'll give a summary update of key activities on the project for the time period from the last meeting in March of 2020 through the end of 2020, and I'll really just extend it today. I provided a detailed report, as you know, to you, and I'll just pull some highlights out of that for your benefit and really the benefit of all that are watching today. So I'll address Enbridge submittals required per the tunnel agreement, which include the joint development of the tunnel specifications. I'll address the design process for the tunnel, and then finally, independent quality assurance contractor. So the first Enbridge submittal is completing the activities identified in their preliminary engineering activities work plan. This is required per the tunnel agreement, section 7.5B, by April 30 of 2020, and that has been completed. Just by way of background, this includes the geotechnical investigations that were primarily carried out in 2019. This includes the development of geotechnical data reports, which have been completed. This includes the initiation of the geotechnical baseline report, which by background is a contractual document that's established industry standard practice with the construction contractor. That has been initiated. It includes risk assessments, which Enbridge has been doing. It includes assembling a project specifications team, and that has been done. And it includes providing input to the permit applications, the major permit applications that Enbridge has proceeded with. And as you heard from Mike Begale, that has been completed in terms of input into the permit applications because those applications have all been submitted. and then includes further refining the tunnel design. Typically in preliminary design, you're bringing to 30% design completion, and that, as I will discuss later, has been completed. So I find that per the agreement, those activities consistent with their preliminary engineering activities work plan have been satisfactorily completed.
Fabulous.
All right, so I'll move on to the next item then.
Yeah.
All right, the next item is the joint development of tunnel project specifications. So the authority ownership or acceptance of tunnel ownership requires that it be constructed in accordance with agreed upon project specifications. Per tunnel agreement section 7.2, Enbridge and the authority identified members of a team to jointly develop project specifications related to design and construction of the tunnel. The team was identified. That occurred last year, and that was approved in the last meeting. And the tunnel agreement states that the jointly developed project specifications pertaining to the tunnel are to be submitted to the authority for approval, and those were submitted to you prior to this meeting for your approval. So by way of background, project specifications include the technical requirements for the tunnel, as well as construction specifications. The technical requirements convey performance requirements, such as the design service life, for example, the 99-year required service life as stipulated in the tunnel agreement, allowable water infiltration rates, tunnel-induced settlement limits, noise and vibration limits, as well as design requirements as are stipulated in the tunnel agreement, such as the minimum diameter of the tunnel, the fact that it must have a structural liner, accommodations for third-party utilities, and then prevention of any pipeline liquids leaking into the lake bed or the straits. The technical requirements also identify the prevailing codes and standards that must be adhered to during design. So this would be including various ACI or American Concrete Institute codes. This would include International Tunneling Association guidelines, National Fire Protection Association design codes and standards, etc. So that's the project specifications. These jointly developed tunnel project specifications include 9 construction specification sections that pertain to the permanent tunnel structure that the authority will ultimately assume ownership of per the tunnel agreement. The 9 sections, I'll just list off these section titles. You've got more detail. In fact, you've got the entire specification list. But these include the following 9 sections. So it's structural concrete materials, it's cast in place concrete, it's precast structural concrete, it's precast concrete tunnel lining, it's sealing leaks, excavation by tunnel boring machine, backfill grouting around the precast tunnel lining. Also includes board piles, which would be used on the north and south shore, and diaphragm walls, which are concrete walls that are used to make the shafts at the north and the south shore that the tunnel then connects to and provides access to the surface for. And then finally, earthwork excavation and backfill. So those 9 sections of the specifications are those that were jointly developed. So together with Enbridge and their consultants, a select group of MDOT engineers and consultants, including myself, hereafter I'll just call that the Authority Joint Specifications Team for ease of discussion. We jointly developed these 9 specification sections throughout 2020 on behalf of the authority. So the team members included myself. The authority joint specification team members included myself, Ryan Mitchell, manager who we've already heard from today, Matt Schnauwith, MDOT's chief bridge engineer, as well as consultants from Alfred Benesch and CDM Smith, as Ryan alluded to earlier in those contracts, who participated at the 90% and 95% level reviews. So the last two consultants participated at the 90 and 95%, the rest of us throughout the process. So we, as the Authority Joint Specifications team, we worked with Tunnel Designer of Record Arup during the development of these 9 sections. These 9 sections built upon the preliminary project specifications that were established in the designer's RFP and the construction services RFP that were approved a year ago in the March meeting. So the specification team involvement involved a formal comment resolution process. This is standard of practice for infrastructure construction projects. I'll just describe briefly the process. So Enbridge's designer of record, Arup, prepared each draft of these 9 sections, beginning at the 60% design level. So by 60% design, you have enough information, enough meat on the bone, so to speak, to really develop detailed guidelines for how these things should be constructed. The Authority Joint Spec team conducted a detailed review of those draft sections to ensure the accordance with tunnel construction best practice and Michigan infrastructure construction practice. We submitted point-by-point comments to each specification section, requesting either additions, modifications, deletions, or clarifications of those draft spec sections. Arup addressed each and every comment with written response. For example, accepting the comment or modifying the specification language, answering the query, or explaining the rationale behind those. We, as the joint spec team, the authority's joint spec team, we reviewed each of those responses, and comments were thereafter closed if the response was deemed acceptable. Comments were continued or elaborated on if further discussion or action was required. Arup then prepared, they took all those 60% specification comments and prepared 90% design level versions of each of those 9 sections, incorporated our comments, other specification advances that simply come with the development of design. The comment resolution process then described was repeated again at the 90% level, and then a similar process was performed at the 95% level. So 3 stages of pretty detailed review, comment, interaction back and forth. We began all this with the full kickoff workshop in March, shortly after the authority meeting, last authority meeting. And then beginning in July, we would meet as a authority spec team via conference call weekly to discuss our individual reviews, comments, and responses. We also then met with Enbridge and its consultants, Arup and WSP, weekly via conference call to further the development and finalization of these 9 sections. So overall, we, as the authority's joint spec team, submitted numbers approaching 400 comments to these 9 sections. Each comment was satisfactorily resolved. We sort of went through every comment. Some were pretty straightforward. Some of them required further discussion. I also understand there was a detailed spec review and comment process within Enbridge's own team. And we saw the results of that captured in the final project specification sections. So with that, that was the process of the project specification development. I will say that we focused on the specifications that deal with the permanent tunnel structure that will be owned by the authority. Specifications related to ancillary efforts, buildings that are owned by Enbridge, and mechanical, electrical, plumbing aspects, those will not be owned by the authority, and so those were not jointly developed. We're really just focused on the tunnel structure which will be owned by the authority. So there's some other details and caveats that I ad nauseum addressed in my report. I won't bore you with those details. I'll mention that from preliminary stage all the way through development in 9 sections, there were 2 modifications in technical requirements from the RFP stage. And since you've already seen RFP stage, I'll just point out those 2. The first one is that the overall water infiltration rate was modified from 5,000 gallons per day to 7,000 gallons per day. That 5,000 gallons per day was contemplating a smaller tunnel. If you recall from the feasibility study, it was a 10-foot, minimum 10-foot ID tunnel that of course grew as necessary. And now the final design is a 21-foot inside diameter tunnel. So we can all do our geometry. We think about surface area through which you do have some minor water infiltration. That number had to go up. And so it's at 7,000, which by the way is pretty consistent with what you see. All tunnels have a little bit of water that infiltrates into them, and particularly tunnels that would be under high water pressure, like the Straits tunnel. The second one is the cover thickness. I'm getting into the weeds here, forgive me, but I just want to be complete. There is typically outside the steel reinforcement in the concrete liner and other concrete elements, you've got a concrete cover thickness. The specifications at RFP stage required a 3-inch cover thickness. But in fact, that cover thickness is a result of design. So Arup, the designer of record, went through a very detailed state of practice design for durability assessment to achieve a 99-year service life. And so whatever that cover thickness comes out, that should be dictated by design. And so that 3-inch was relaxed and essentially allowed to be an output of tunnel design. So those 2 changes were modified. But that said, I would offer then, I think I find the jointly developed tunnel project specifications to be comprehensive, very detailed, and consistent with standard of practice in tunnel design and construction. And so with that, I can answer any questions about the jointly developed project specifications that you may have.
I would just like to comment that the process you described was really very impressive. And I know that we are going to be asked to approve the specifications. There are 237 pages of them, and they're quite dense. I have looked at them, but I'm trusting this process you described in my vote, because it is a very comprehensive and assuring process.
Well, and Tony, to echo your point, it's part of the tunnel agreement that we as the authority approve these jointly developed specs. Mike, you made a comment, and I think I knew where you were going, but I just want it to be open. Again, I'm big on the transparency. So you said it was 404 comments or 440 comments that you guys, as the MDOT authority spec team, as we're calling it, gave, and all were accepted, blah, blah, blah. Does that mean that they did not deny any? You were able to come to a resolution on every one of your questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I think there was 380-ish, something like that. So slightly less than 400, but approximately 400. And some of the comments were easy to accept. It was an oversight, for example, which happens when you have 240 pages of really dense material. Some of them were just clarifying comments, and then some of them were there was some back and forth discussion, and through our weekly process, there was resolution achieved on all of those. But at the end of the day, all of the comments were successfully and to the satisfaction of the authority's joint spec team were acceptable and ticked off as complete.
Good. So, and then to a conversation that we had earlier in our meeting, I mean, you can just give a 10, 15-second comment, but the comments about concrete and geology here in Michigan and stuff, that's why it's so important to have a Michigan-focused team, because building a tunnel in another state is certainly different than it is here in Michigan, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And I'll just point to the concrete specifications, because those get into the detail about casting concrete, batching concrete, where those aggregate materials come from. And so you really want to have Michigan practice, expertise in Michigan concrete practice involved, because Michigan has, particularly up in the Straits, there's a climate associated with Michigan. Those concrete materials have to be sourced and then batched in the general vicinity of the Straits location. And so you really want to have that deep knowledge of Michigan concrete practice involved in the specs. And I will say that, you know, Enbridge's consultants as well brought that experience too. So
Sure.
But on behalf of the authority, we really wanted to have that. And Matt Chenoweth at MDOT certainly provided that. But given, as was mentioned earlier, as busy as he is, bringing in some consulting support that does work for MDOT already in other areas was really valuable to the process.
I asked one question, I'm sure, in our private conversation between yourself and myself, not a committee thing. I did ask about where the tailings from this larger tunnel go, but probably a lot of the people listening to this would like to know that also.
Yeah, sure, you bet. So typically on tunnel projects, the excavated material, the responsibility of disposing of that lies with the contractor, the construction contractor. So this would be Obayashi, JD. And so it's a bit premature to say exactly where those will go. Certainly it will be their responsibility to find a location. So there's many different avenues, and it really depends. Sometimes you can find a great commercial or engineering use for those rock chips that come out of the ground. They could be base course for roads. They could be filling up an old abandoned mine. And this is not specific to the GLTP, but just in general.
Yes.
There is no evidence of any toxic aspects to the ground. So those materials coming out are not going to be deemed hazardous material, to my understanding. And so, but it's a bit, Dr. England, it's a bit premature to say exactly what the plan is yet, but there will be a plan as the process progresses.
Thank you.
And before we put this to a vote, I just want to be clear, Mike, as we go forward with your presentations, when you say we can all do our geometry, you and Dr. England probably can. I don't know if I remember it from high school, so let's not assume. With that, Tony, I would ask, are you willing to make a motion to approve the joint specs?
I make a motion to approve the joint specs.
Second, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Michael, thank you for that. Do you have any further reporting?
Yeah, I do. Just two more
Yeah.
items.
Yep.
So
All
the
right.
next one is the design process. I just want to give you an update on Enbridge and their consultants' design process. So as I mentioned, their designer of record is Arup and their owner's engineer is WSP. And they have been carrying out detailed design of the tunnel and the north-south shore shaft portal structures throughout 2020, as Mike Begale has described. They completed their 30% design level in March 2020, 60% design in July 2020, and then 90% design end of October, early November. So in compliance with the tunnel agreement, section 7.6, Enbridge provided me with access to observe the design process. That means access to their secure digital documents website, where I've been able to view design documents, view design drawings, access to join via web conference in these COVID times, review meetings hosted by Enbridge at their 30% and 60% design levels. And I'll join one here in the coming weeks for 90% design review. And then I've joined weekly GLTP calls where Enbridge, WSP, Arup, and the contractor address a variety of engineering, design, construction, and process issues advancing this. Enbridge, I do want to mention. So, I mean, of course, we're not doing the detailed design review. That is not called for in the agreement. Enbridge did share with us their independent design review process, and I wanted to provide some assurance to you. I've detailed it in my report, but it's worth mentioning. Arup as the designer of record, and I've said this before, but from a level of comfort perspective, Arup as the designer of record is a world-class tunnel design firm, has designed tunnels in the similar category of complexity. And so they are pulling from resources around the world as a company, as well as external subject matter experts. So their process of internal design review often involves their core team sending their design calculations to other people in their firm who are not involved in the level of detail to do design check reviews, as well as having external subject matter experts. So their designer themselves, they have an internal design review process. In addition to that, WSP is also a world-class tunnel design firm. They are the owner's engineer, that's their role here, but they are performing independent design review of Arup's design. So there's another level of design review by sort of world-class expertise in tunnel design. So I think you can feel, I certainly feel confident that their design review process is rigorous, and it is industry standard in terms of how they're going about their design review. Lastly, Enbridge themselves has external subject matter experts that they've hired to provide input on tunnel aspects throughout the project. And then truly lastly, I will say that as I've described before, because of the contracting model here, this CMGC contract model, they've been able to bring in GLTC, which is Obayashi and JD, as the construction contractors right from day one. And tunnel projects like this one, the design of that tunnel project needs to incorporate constructability aspects from day one, because it will often direct the design. And that's what's happened here. So that has been hugely beneficial to the project, as well as bringing in Heron Connect, which is the German TBM manufacturer, who knows better than anybody everything about the machine that will do the work that both excavates the ground and installs the tunnel lining. So I just wanted to make the comment that per the agreement, we have been provided access to sort of an over-the-shoulder look at their design process, and Enbridge has, and so that I would conclude by just saying that their design process is pretty rigorous.
Fabulous. Thank you for that, Mike. It gives us as authority members a deep level of comfort as well.
It does. Thank you.
All right. The last point I'll make is about informational item is about the independent quality assurance of construction. So per tunnel agreement section 5.3, Enbridge will provide the funds necessary for the authority to retain an independent QA contractor to monitor tunnel construction. And I'll tee this up perhaps for for Ryan to take over here in a minute. But I do want to just mention that that process is ongoing. It's a natural extension of the project specifications that were just developed. And so throughout the last quarter of 2020, the authority's joint specifications team worked with Enbridge to ensure that these clearly defined QC requirements were established in each of those 9 project specification sections. So the construction contractor then will be required to perform and meet those requirements. And then Enbridge's QA plan will provide assurance that those project specifications are met. Enbridge has provided us information about their QA policies and preliminary QA plans for the Great Lakes Tunnel project. A draft RFP for the authority's IQA consultant, independent quality assurance consultant, is under development. The scope of work for them will include providing owner verification documentation on behalf of the authority, a comprehensive and conclusive record of project QC and QA, testing and inspection, demonstrating that the construction of the tunnel project has met the requirements of the tunnel agreement, the jointly developed project specifications, and then project-specific quality plans and inspection and test plans. So that's just more of an informational item. Ryan Mitchell may want to add some more to that, but with that,
let me try to just break that down with you, Mike. And Ryan, go ahead and hop on with us for a second. I think we need to boil this down for those folks that from the public that might be listening in, because you said a mouthful there, even for a tunnel expert and somebody that's in the know. So I'm gonna say it in layman's terms for everyone, and you and Ryan fill in the blanks, Mike. But Tony, I think the most important or the easiest way to look at this important component is that the QC is being put in place through our expert involvement in the joint specifications and that look over the shoulder in the design process. The quality control is going to be there for the contractor to build this thing properly based on the specifications that have been jointly developed ahead of time. So that is going to guide the construction. That is our quality control. But our quality assurance as an authority, that we're assured that it's being done per those specifications, will be assured to us by the consultant that we will hire and Enbridge will pay for. Now, to some folks, that might be a contradiction that Enbridge is paying for it. They are paying for that quality assurance consultant for us per the agreement, but that quality assurance consultant will answer to the authority just like Mike does, being our expert, watching how the construction is put into place, making sure that they are following the specifications that have been jointly developed. Did I lay that out properly, Mike and Ryan?
yeah, I think you laid that out properly. Ryan?
Yeah, and the idea behind that concept and the whole structure of the tunnel agreement is to eliminate risk and liability to the state.
Absolutely.
And that's the whole purpose of that arrangement.
Ryan, let me ask another question. So developing a specification or an RFP, I guess, specification, whatever the proper vernacular is, to reach out and find the best possible consultant. You at MDOT kind of guide this division, and you do this all the time. So your input is valuable to us in developing this spec, along with Mike's years of experience of working on a variety of construction projects, correct?
Yes, and again, as you said, MDOT frequently, routinely hires quality assurance contractors on our construction projects to oversee and verify the testing, inspection, quality control, and quality assurance procedures of the contractor.
Super.
Yep.
So Tony, I think that moving this forward, is the great next step. Obviously, we don't need a consultant on too early. They're there to review the construction practices and make sure they're adhering to the specifications that are that we just approved. But I think it's certainly a next step for us. And so, Ryan, Mike, we will look forward to seeing the RFP and getting that out there when you deem it to be a reasonable timeline. Any other comments from Mike or Ryan?
No, I think the timing you described makes sense. That is the next probably major effort from the authority. You would want to have your advisor and your consultant in place prior to construction, obviously, by a good several months, so they can be onboarded and to understand the project specifications and
Sure.
and the concept of the project. But there's a lot of activities that will take place between now and then. So
Great. Thank you, Ryan. Mike, anything else?
No, nothing further to add.
Thanks for the great report, Mike. Thanks for the input, Ryan. With that, Tony, do you have any other comments?
One thing I'll just comment on the contract model, that CMGC model that you talked about. I just had an experience at our local university where a much smaller scale, but still it was a $90 million building. We used the same contract model. And because of that, we were able to carry less contingency because people had more confidence that the job could be done within budget. So I really applaud everything that that I see being done to make sure that this project is a success and something that will the state will be able to use for its 99 years.
Mike, any follow-up to Tony's comment?
No further comments or follow-up to offer. I agree.
All right. Thank you, Mike. And so with that, we'll move on to the public comment section. I will remind everyone that we did receive numerous public comments ahead of time. We do still have some time allotted for our meeting, but we will be shutting this meeting down promptly at 4 o'clock. And so with that, I'm going to introduce James Lake. Monica Mansma has already introduced herself, and then Ruth Clark from the Communications Division of MDOT. And so with that, I will turn the public comment section over to be managed by those three, and we will start with James Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm joining the meeting from Gaylord in Otsego County, Michigan. The first, well, as you mentioned, any of the public comments that were received prior to 11 a.m. today were forwarded to the board members ahead of the meeting. So we're picking up after that break point. First comment is from Traven Michaels. He writes, "Thank you for the opportunity to comment today. LTBB does not support Enbridge's Great Lakes Tunnel project to place a cement tunnel under the Straits of Mackinac. LTBB adopted a tribal resolution in October 2018, concluding that the only adequate solution to mitigate the risk posed by the operation of Line 5 is to decommission and safely remove all segments of Line 5. Thus, the tunnel project is not an adequate solution for risk mitigation. Little Traverse Bay Bands has numerous concerns with the proposed Line 5 tunnel through the Straits or under the Straits. Several aspects of this project are still unknown, including the lack of geological knowledge due to the limited number of borings and insufficient information on the location of cultural resources near the project site, mitigation of the threatened flora species, whether the wastewater effluent discharged into the Straits would be contaminated, and how Enbridge will alleviate the risks involving methane during tunnel construction and maintenance. The Little Traverse Bay Bands of Odawa Indians Tribal Historic Preservation Office offers a finding of adverse effect to known historic, traditional, religious, and cultural significant significance properties that will be affected. The 1836 Treaty of Washington retained treaty rights for the signatory tribes, including LTBB, in the ceded territory, which includes the Straits of Mackinac. Either the repercussions from the tunnel project or the continued use of the dual pipelines pose an insurmountable risk to the signatory tribes' treaty rights. With a large portion of the 1836 treaty tribes' fish harvest coming from the spawning areas in the Straits, Line 5 creates an unacceptable risk to the fishery. Despite this immense risk, this is not just a Straits problem. There are many other locations in the Upper Great Lakes Basin through which Line 5 traverses critical areas and risks irreversible damage to aquatic ecosystems. Similarly, in the event of a spill, flora and fauna which live near the contaminated area will likely not be suitable to harvest, eliminating their use by the tribes since time immemorial. The tunnel project creates an unacceptable risk to the health of our tribal community and our legal rights under the 1836 Treaty of Washington. Enbridge's inadequate safety and communication records from 1953 to date do not allow us to trust that Enbridge will follow the environmental mitigation strategies outlined in their applications. In addition, LTBB is continually working toward being more sustainable, in part by installing multiple solar panel arrays and increasing energy efficiency. Constructing a tunnel on an easement lasting for 99 years would run contrary to the crucial societal effort to rapidly reduce fossil fuel usage and mitigate the effects of climate change. This project could damage culturally important sites, the tribal commercial fishery, offshore and inland tribal treaty rights, drinking water for local citizens, Northern Michigan's tourism industry, and many more than human relatives.
Hello. The next comment is from Kathleen Brossamer, Environmental Manager, Sioux Tribe. The Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians passed Resolution 2021-38 to protect the Straits of Mackinac as a traditional cultural property site. The tribe is signatory to the 1836 Treaty of Washington, which predates the existence of the state of Michigan, and maintains that it never ceded control of the bottomlands of the Straits or its other fishing grounds, either in the Treaty of Washington or in any other treaty of cession. The tribe holds and exercises usufructuary rights to hunt, fish, and gather, and rights of normal occupancy of the lands in the ceded territory, and does not consent to have this territory occupied by crude oil pipelines, whether lying on the bottom of the Straits or contained in a tunnel beneath the waters. The text of Resolution 2021-38 is as follows. To protect the Straits of Mackinac as a traditional cultural property site, whereas the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians, Sioux Tribe, is a federal recognized tribe and invested with inherent sovereignty and rights to self-governance, and whereas the Sioux Tribe is signatory to the 1836 Treaty of Washington, which ceded the use of land that allowed for the formation of the state of Michigan, and whereas the 1836 Treaty of Washington reserved usufructuary rights in perpetuity, such rights to include hunting and gathering and the rights of usual occupancy, to the native people signatories to the treaty, and whereas the tribal board of the Sioux Tribe is in support of the Sioux Tribe's Language and Cultural Department and Environmental Department compiling preliminary research that will be used to support the protection of tribal, cultural, historical, and natural resources. And whereas the Enbridge Line 5 twin pipelines and its proposed tunnel lie within the terrestrial and submerged bottomlands of the Straits of Mackinac, and whereas the Sioux Tribe never ceded control of the lakes or lake bottoms to any other government entity in the Treaty of Washington or any other treaty of cession, and whereas the Straits of Mackinac, including the waters, terrestrial ecosystems adjacent to the waters, and the submerged bottomlands as the heart of Turtle Island in the middle of the Great Lakes, has significant culture, history, and identity to the Sioux Tribe. And whereas the Sioux Tribe Board of Directors supports the designation of the Straits of Mackinac and its submerged bottomlands as a traditional cultural property site with significant culture, history, and identity. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians does hereby as follows. 1. Direct the Sioux Tribe Language and Cultural Department and Environmental Department to compile preliminary research for the area around the Enbridge Line 5 twin pipelines and the proposed tunnel project in order to protect the traditional, cultural, and historic resources of the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians, and further, 2. Direct the Sioux Tribe Language and Cultural Department and Environmental Department to submit the information to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and other agencies for formal designation as a traditional cultural property site. Be it further resolved that the chairperson and treasurer are authorized to execute any and all documents necessary to carry out the intent of this resolution. Certification. We, the undersigned, as chairperson and secretary of the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians, hereby certify that the board of directors is composed of 13 members, of whom 13 members constituting a quorum were present at a meeting thereof duly called, noticed, convened, and held on the 2nd day of February 2021, that the foregoing resolution was duly adopted at said meeting by an affirmative vote of 12 members, for 0 members against, 0 members abstaining, and that said resolution has not been rescinded or amended in any way.
My name is Ruth Clark, and I work at MDOT as a transportation planner. I'm calling in from East Lansing, Ingham County, Michigan. I'm reading a comment from Patricia McGowan. My name is Patricia McGowan, a member of the Little Traverse Bay Band of Ottawa Indians. I am a mother and a grandmother, and it is my responsibility to take care of my family, my community, and the next 7 generations. I cannot, in good conscience, be silent any longer as Line 5 threatens the Great Lakes. The proposed tunnel does not protect our waters and will destroy historical sites on the floor of Lake Michigan. You all should be ashamed of yourselves for not taking into consideration the environmental impacts that this tunnel will cause and the real threat to continued damage to the environment. When the oil spills and our lives are forever changed, this will be the fault of the Enbridge and the Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority members who vote for the tunnel.
The next comment is from Kathleen Brosemer, Environmental Manager, Sioux Tribe. The tunnel does nothing to address the risk of the 90 miles of pipe that lies within 1.5 miles of the Lake Michigan shoreline along the Highway 2 corridor. In fact, it makes it riskier because it diverts attention to the Straits crossing, as if that's the only danger in this 68-year-old pipeline. It would mean the whole line would be kept operating for additional decades past its design life. 2, it's not in the public interest to build a tunnel to ship oil for 99 years. We must stop burning oil for within the next 20 years if humanity is to survive the 6th extinction, and much sooner than that to avoid horrific suffering from droughts, fires, storms, and crop failures. To plan for a $500 million infrastructure project to keep shipping oil is inhumane, unjust, short-sighted, and cruel. 3, we believe Enbridge has no intention of actually building this tunnel. A $500 million investment in 4 miles of an aging pipe, more than 700 miles long, doesn't make sense. A $500 million investment in a system with excess capacity doesn't make sense. A $500 million investment in a sunset industry doesn't make sense. The only thing that makes sense is a pretense of tunnel plans to mollify those worried about an anchor strike in the Straits so they can keep operating as long as it's still profitable.
My apologies for that delay. The next comment is from Ryan Gravel. My name is Ryan Gravel. I am a citizen of Bay Mills Indian community. I oppose the Line 5 dual pipelines and the Line 5 tunnel project. I am extremely concerned about the inadequacies of this public process that allowed the Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority to convene without alerting the public to that information nor providing the opportunity to review and provide comments on the information submitted to the MSCA. As a tribal citizen, the Great Lakes have profound cultural significance to my tribe and myself. According to the oral histories of my people, the creation of North America began in the Straits of Mackinac. It is our Garden of Eden. The Straits are more than a waterway. They are a place of ongoing spiritual significance to the way of life and should be protected, preserved, and recognized as such. As we know, a renowned archaeologist at the University of Michigan, Dr. John O'Shea, notified Michigan State Historic Preservation Office that he was contacted by a whistleblower technician involved in the previously completed Cultural Resources Survey. The whistleblower explained that Enbridge's cultural survey ignored relevant evidence of prehistoric use even after the technician identified the evidence and asked for permission to speak with Dr. O'Shea. The MSCA should not be moving forward on this project until Enbridge Energy completes a cultural resource survey for the upland and bottomland areas within the Straits of Mackinac. Potential project impacts to all cultural sites should be assessed by Enbridge first, not after. Thank you for your time today.
This comment is from Robert Asanawe. Pipelines and the tunnel project do not have to run through the Great Lakes Straits. The oil and gas industry is dwindling out. A project like this may generate income for a few more years, but the cost, cons, and risk of the project outweigh the pros. The Great Lakes are more than just water. It's home to many, harbors a lot of wildlife. Ecological disaster will affect more than just the surrounding area.
The next comment is from Kayla Perrin. My name is Kayla Perrin. I am Anishinaabe, Great Lakes Ojibwa, and member of the Bay Mills Indian community. I strongly oppose the Liner 5 pipelines and the Straits Tunnel project. Destroying our lands and our waters is an attack on Indigenous people and directly affects our communities first. It's threatening our way of life to fill the pockets of corporations.
The next comment is from Joshua Hudson. I think that an aged pipeline is too great of a risk to allow to continued operations in our Great Lakes. I do not believe that a tunnel is an appropriate workaround either. There's no guarantee that a tunnel will be sufficiently protecting our environment because even new pipelines constructed in the last 10 years by Enbridge are leaking currently. There is too great of risks for environmental harm and the subsequent economic harm that would befall the Great Lakes state, and no meaningful protections are in place to protect us, the citizenry, against the lobbying and backroom deals paid for Enbridge.
The next comment is from Jadine S. This tunnel project should be halted, not moved forward. It's clear that our world is moving away from fossil fuels and into a future that will be cleaner and healthier, economically and physically. Sinking money into a new project this big does not make sense. Instead, we should remove Line 5 from the Straits in accordance with Governor Whitmer's decision to revoke Enbridge's easement and not pursue any attempts to feed the link under the Straits.
The next comment is from Chris Semranek. My name is Chris Semranek, and I am a current law student. I object both the continued operation of Line 5 and the building of the proposed tunnel project. I was born and raised on the Great Lakes in Grand Haven, Michigan, and have felt a deep passion for the protection of the Great Lakes. This is also why I am dedicated to pursuing a career in environmental and natural resource law and policy. I do not support the proposed tunnel project because it continues to place one of Michigan's most precious resources at significant risk of a potential oil spill, regardless of the proposed tunnel. There is still a substantial amount of risk associated with both the construction of the tunnel and the continued operation of Line 5.
The next comment is from Sharon Lang, Chair, Sheboygan County EDC. Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Lang, and I address the authority today with comments of support for Enbridge as a critical economic partner in Sheboygan County and in favor of their Straits of Mackinac Tunnel project. My qualifying touch points include: I am chairman of the Sheboygan County Economic Development Corporation, EDC, president to the Sheboygan Economic Development Group, CEDG, serve on the Port of Sheboygan Committee, and am a multiple private business owner in downtown Sheboygan. I reside on the Sheboygan River and am a lifetime recreational boater in the Straits of Mackinac and connecting waterways. As such, I have a wide variety and rounded perspective in regards to both the significant economic importance and impact of Enbridge and an intimate daily experience with the pristine waters of Michigan. As Sheboygan County's largest taxpayer, for some of our townships, more than 50% of their operating budget, Enbridge is indisputably critical to the daily functions and economic health of Sheboygan communities. In addition to the blatantly obvious financial impact, as a county situated at the tip of the mitt and the gateway to the inland waterway, Sheboygan most certainly supports clean water and the safety of the Great Lakes. That the energy supply of Line 5 need continue for the indisputable benefit of all Michigan is obvious. Equally so, that the security and safety of the tunnel project to protect our waters by replacing Line 5 with the very best global technology is equally obvious. Thank you for the opportunity to comment and reiterate Sheboygan County's support of Enbridge and the tunnel from my service points.
This comment is from David Holt. David Holt, on behalf of Oil and Water Don't Mix, representing Michigan environmental, civic, business, and tribal groups opposed to oil pipelines in the Great Lakes. It's been 11 months since the Corridor Authority held a public meeting. The legislature created the Corridor Authority to ensure that a utility tunnel is built to sufficient technical specifications. It is subject to the Michigan's Open Meetings Act. Over the past 11 months, without any public input, the state's public body charged with overseeing Enbridge's proposed tunnel design and construction has surrendered the public's interest to Enbridge's interest and delegated its responsibilities to others. The Corridor Authority is, in fact, a ghost public body with a multi-million budget that is being managed in the dark. At your last public meeting in March 2020 in St. Ignace, you were told by your consultant, Mike Murray, that any final tunnel design decision would be decided by the Corridor Authority. See 2149 in the video recording of Corridor meeting. You haven't met since then, let alone debated or decided a tunnel design in an open meeting. Instead, the designer preferred by Enbridge is moving forward a design that an independent open water tunnel expert says is cheaper for Enbridge to build, but riskier for the Great Lakes. You have left whatever decisions are being made on the tunnel in the hands of MDOT and other state agency staff, consultants, and Enbridge without the kind of public scrutiny and accountability that comes with open meetings and decisions that the legislature intended when it created the Corridor Authority. The fact that these decisions are being made in the dark also raises questions about whether Michigan's Open Meetings Act is being violated. Chairman Nystrom has signed nearly $500,000 in consulting contracts related to the Corridor Authority's tunnel oversight without any public input and opportunity to comment. And in the case of the McMillen-Jacobs contract to advise on tunnel design, a state permitting authority, the Michigan Department of Energy, Great Lakes and Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, announced the decision to hire. It created the impression that McMillen-Jacobs was accountable to Eagle, when in fact they were hired by the Corridor Authority, again without any opportunity for public input. Why is this an important distinction? Because the Corridor Authority was created by the legislature to oversee tunnel implementation. Its clear mission, as defined in Public Act 359, presumes that Enbridge's tunnel would be built. That is not Eagle's mission, which is to protect the Great Lakes. But Eagle's tunnel consultants work for the Corridor Authority. Is this a conflict of interest? Was this arrangement to use Corridor Authority funds to hire consultants to independently evaluate Enbridge's tunnel design in the public interest? Those questions should have been debated and decided in the light. Instead, they were decided in the dark, without debate or public disclosure.
We had a couple of comments submitted that were relative to the broadcast. One was, FYI, the live stream is echoing everything you say. There is a significant amount of echo in the live stream. And then please fix your audio. It is hard to hear because everything is echoing and repeating back. We apologize for that. I believe we got that straightened out soon after these comments were lodged. I'll read the next comment. It is from Emily Paskey. I attempted to put this in the comment section of the live stream, but that box is character limited and I would have to submit one sentence at a time. I comment from my personal capacity as a lifelong resident of Michigan and a consumer of this state's natural resources. Any action but complete decommission of the pipelines from the Great Lakes water system is a continued risk. The use of Line 5 is not important to Michigan residents compared to what we risk losing. The current structure is delicate and we are racing against time. Building a tunnel just increases the risk of a spill. Tunnel construction will require ongoing maintenance as pipelines continue to decay, while decommissioning Line 5 poses zero risk. These waters and shorelines are part of the public trust, and as such, Line 5 compromises our rights to use, navigate, and sustain life from this trust resource. We have a duty to protect this trust resource for future generations of Michiganders, whose economy and health will be deeply destroyed by an oil spill. Over 1 million gallons of oil have already been spilled across Michigan and Wisconsin since 1968. The conversation isn't about if the line leaks, it is about when it will. While I respect the need to provide for the energy needs of Northern Michigan, necessity breeds innovation. Our state resources are better spent developing new energy options than being invested in a failing oil system. It is now absolutely necessary to protect our water, shoreline, residents, and wildlife because of any risk of a leak or spill, which we know is inevitable with time, is too high to warrant anything we gain from continuing to use Line 5. Finally, any decisions made about Line 5 should center the voices of Michigan's indigenous tribes, which have been knowledgeable and skilled stewards of our water and wildlife since time immemorial.
This comment is submitted by Jim Olson, President and Legal Advisor on behalf of For Love of Water, FLOW, Great Lakes Public Trust, Water and Natural Resources Law and Policy Center. My public comment is as follows. Statement before the Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority regarding Line 5 easement assignment, tunnel agreement, and 99-year lease, public meeting, February 3rd, 2021. Jim Olson, President and Legal Advisor for Love of Water and many organizations, appeared and testified before this authority on March 6, 2020. At that time, FLOW submitted a legal analysis and comment dated March 5, 2020, and on March 6, 2020, made an oral presentation to the authority that is part of the record in this matter. I realize that there are new members of the authority, so I have attached a copy of this analysis in the chat box for your convenience and because of the limited time for public comment at this meeting. Without waiving several points contained in FLOW's analysis and comments today, I want to underscore the fact and law that the DNR easement assignment from you to Enbridge and the tunnel agreement provisions calling for a 99-year lease have not been authorized under the rule of law of the public trust doctrine. Just a moment. 1. These documents are subject to the GLSLA 324.32502-32508 and rules, but to date, the agreements and conveyance documents have not been authorized under the GLSLA. 2. The DNR tunnel right-of-way or easement purports to be authorized under Act 10, now MCL 324.32502 2129 for a public utility easement. However, the DNR has never authorized it based on the required findings under the public trust doctrine and absolute necessity based on the position of the state, AG Nessel, and DNR in the Ingham County cases, Nessel versus Enbridge, and state governor and DNR director versus Enbridge. Until this authority is obtained by Enbridge, no contract shall be signed, no money spent, and no construction commenced. To do so would be at MSCA's and Enbridge's own risk. For this reason, you, the members of MSCA, are requested respectfully to ask for an opinion of Attorney General Dana Nessel on the serious question of the lack of required authorization of the 2018 easement, the assignment of the easement, and the tunnel agreement 99-year lease agreement for occupancy and use of the state's sovereign public trust bottomlands and waters of the Great Lakes. Thank you. Should you have any questions or your AG staff have questions, we remain available to discuss the same. Jim Olson, followed by his email address.
The next comment is from Bentley Johnson. I'm mostly limiting my comments to the values of good governance and open meetings for this section. The Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority has not publicly met in almost a year. It was said on this call that MSCA was allowed to move forward on key decisions without public meetings, and also said it would have been nice to have public meetings, but no actual reason was given for not having a public meeting. What was the actual reason for not having a public meeting when these contracts were executed and other decisions were made? Other state agencies continued to have public meetings with actual opportunities for people to make comments throughout the pandemic. In addition, considering that it's been nearly a year since the MSCA has met, it seems to me that there was plenty of time to give more than adequate notification that this meeting today was scheduled, as well as to provide documents for the public and other key experts to review before the meetings. The contracts with McMillen, Jacobs, or Enbridge's presentation slides, for example. As far as I can tell, the public was notified last Friday, January 29th. Why couldn't notification have been provided with 2 weeks' notice, even if the meeting had to be held in the next 2 weeks? But what might be most concerning is how this meeting has handled the public comment. I understand that there are limitations from COVID-19 and other factors, but requiring people to listen and analyze the information provided during the meeting and then compose their 3-minute comments in writing to be read aloud does not represent good government or consistent with open meeting principles, in my humble opinion. There was not even the bare minimum of guidance in terms of how many words might be considered a 3-minute comment. I'm very disappointed in the lack of transparency I've seen from the Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority, to say the least. The lack of transparency only furthers the perception that this body is only concerned with making sure the tunnel project happens, even while other agencies and entities evaluate whether the project is in the public interest of Michigan in the first place. Given that this project, which will realistically blow past Enbridge's 4 to 5 year construction timeline, will be a liability and future stranded asset for the state of Michigan, given the strong trends we are seeing in the energy industry and government policy. As I was writing this, I just heard on the call that the Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority members thought that there were thousands of geotechnical borings. That does not inspire confidence that the MSCA is paying close attention. The borings are a fundamental piece of this project and discussed at length in Eagle meetings and elsewhere. In fact, in the documents released around the Eagle permitting decision process, the McMillen reports indicated that the number of geotechnical borings were not sufficient. In Eagle's response to concerns about the lack of borings, Eagle said that the lack of borings was a business risk, not an environmental risk, which is contradictory on its face and of grave concern for the taxpayers of Michigan and our economy, given the high stakes of a catastrophic incident during construction or operation of the tunnel. Given the nature of the public comment, who knows what other issues will be raised that I would have liked to comment on before submitting this written comment, which has taken up most of the meeting for me to write.
The next comment, these comments are on behalf of Beth Wallace with the National Wildlife Federation. First, we support the concerns and questions raised by the Oil and Water Don't Mix Coalition and request response to the questions. It has been clear for the past 5 years that public engagement on Line 5 is critical, and to date, the Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority appears to be conducting critical businesses outside the requirements found in Michigan's Open Meetings Act. In addition, the activities that happen behind closed doors draw real questions about intent and only build on the lack of trust for this process and this project. This authority is not providing the public sufficient information on decision making and has failed to justify decisions that have been made in the past 12 or 11 months. It appears your authority is blaming COVID-19 for the closed door activity, but many other agencies / decision-making bodies have worked through public meeting challenges given COVID. This is not an excuse for keeping these major decisions out of public view and moving forward for a project that has immense risk to our Great Lakes. If COVID was a challenge to public engagement, then decision-making needed to cease. Reasons why the public can't be shut out of the process, : the geotechnical analysis are not sufficient, and experts in the public, including retired state agency personnel and independent tunneling experts, have spoken out about this in detail. Enbridge has not provided a proper risk registry for this project, including what would happen if there's a collapse of the tunnel or a frack out. Enbridge has not provided a plan for mitigation of risks or provided a sufficient review of impacts from construction. Even in this very meeting, Enbridge was unable to answer very basic questions regarding mishaps that could happen, and it was clear that members of this authority are not aware of basic facts around the geotechnical failures of Enbridge's analysis, including the number of boring samples they took, which have been noted by tunneling experts as insufficient. The National Wildlife Federation also has questions around the various agencies sharing / using the same experts for decision making and review, especially when those experts are helping Enbridge with the design, and especially when the public is being limited or removed altogether, as it has been in this case. Again, this does not instill trust in the process or the project. Finally, the way in which you are collecting public comment for this meeting is not at all sufficient, and we encourage you to post presentation materials ahead of the meeting, as well as give the public an opportunity to speak openly.
The next comment is actually a question, and I'll read it, but I believe I will be able to follow up with this individual by email. It's from Sean Shepard, and he asks, will you be using hydrovac vacuum excavation on this project? Who is a good contact to discuss this further? And that is something that we can follow up on email, since Mr. Shepard shared his email address. The next comment is related to our chat function of this meeting. It just asking if anyone is monitoring the chat or picking up questions. I also responded to that person by email to give them an opportunity to provide comments. And then the next comment is also a question. I'll just read it and then pass this over to Ruth for the next comment. One speaker, this is from Jack Siegel. One speaker referred to using patrol boats as one of 3 safety measures to monitor the integrity of the tunnel. How would that function be covered in storms, icing, and other severe conditions?
All right, our next question is from Jack Siegel. The presentation today, 2/3 of 2021, seemed entirely to consist of advocates of the tunnel and interested parties. The governor is opposed. Was she invited to send a representative to provide other opinions? The following comment is also from Jack Siegel. If the Enbridge pipeline leaks within the tunnel, what is the plan for preventing leakage into the lake?
The next comment is from Jim Olson. For your convenience, here is a direct link to Flo's March 5th and 6th comments, https://for-water.org/WP-hyphen-content/uploads/2020/03/flow-2020 period 03 period 05 period to the MSCA on the serious question of lack of authorization of the easement, assignment of easement, and 99-year lease as required by the Great Lakes Submerged Lands Act in Act 10 MCL 324.2129 and the requirements for determinations of authorization under public trust law. Since March 6, 2020, the Attorney General and State of Michigan have concluded that the public trust authorization and determinations apply, and that any conveyance, easement, or lease is void or of no legal effect in the absence of that authorization. Again, thank you for your serious consideration, and we urge you to seek an opinion from Attorney General Dana Nessel before you proceed with any material commitments, expenses, or other obligations, or expressly condition any such matters on such authorization under the GLSLA, Act 10, and Public Trust Law.
The next comment is from Jack Siegel. The governor and AG are engaged in legal efforts to shut down Line 5 and, I believe, prevent the construction of the tunnel. Isn't MDOT under the governor's authority? At today's meeting, MDOT seems to be very much an advocate. Is that appropriate? And if you give us just a moment to refresh, we do have another public comment. From time to time, we have to refresh throughout this process so that we keep up, and there is another one. If you would like to go ahead, Ruth.
Sure. This comment is from Jody Palmer. Match-E-Benashewish Band of Potawatomi does not support the Enbridge Tunnel going through the Straits. We support the 12 federally recognized Michigan tribes' objection to this construction project. We would like to reserve our right to further consultation and comments.
Mr. Chair, that appears to be all of the public comments we've received to this point.
Okay. Thank you to all three of you for taking the time to read those for folks. I am going to make a quick address of some of the comments and concerns because I don't want people walking away from this meeting filled with anxiety. So the two major points that I'm going to make, because it came out in numerous comments, is that we did not have a meeting and could have. We were restricted from having meetings throughout the last 11 months, last 9.5 months, we'll say, because of COVID restrictions through the executive order. Folks made mention of other public entities who were having meetings. There were not state agencies who were having commission meetings during this period of time that the governor put the executive order in place. And so we have had conversations about having meetings, but we're not able to based on the executive order that was in place. And then with the holidays and whatnot, this is as quickly as we could put that in place. We did follow the public notice guidelines. So the assertion that we gave too quick of a public notice, all legal guidelines were followed per state law as far as notifications are concerned. And lastly, the public comment process, we're all learning through this use of technology for meetings, and to have meetings where folks are being let in to verbally give their public comments is just challenging so far. And because we haven't had a lot of practice, felt this was the best possible way under the law, under the executive orders, to give people an opportunity to have their voice be heard. And I will commit to you that the authority members have received the public comments that came through prior to the meeting, and we had some time to digest those this morning. I had a brief conversation about them at the beginning and wanted to make sure that anyone else had an opportunity. I understand it's difficult to type during a meeting while you're trying to pay attention, but this is the world that we're living in, and no fault of anyone in particular, but we are making every attempt at transparency and giving everyone an opportunity to have their voice be heard. So with that, Tony, if you don't have anything else.
I would like to say again that while it may sound like we're advocates for the pipeline or this tunnel, we're really not. What we're advocates for, if this tunnel is going to happen, that it be something that serves the public of Michigan well. I mean, that's the way I'm trying to approach this position. And so that means that if I see something that's being done well, I will applaud it. That doesn't, and if I see something that I think is not being done well, I will certainly say so. I'm looking at representing the people of Michigan. If this tunnel is to be built, that it be built well. That is what I see as the authority's job. And some of the comments I thought didn't recognize that was what we were trying to do.
I think that's an excellent point, Tony. We read the responsibility of the authority. I did at the beginning of the meeting, and our responsibility is to simply oversee the design, construction, operation, and maintenance of a tunnel. It's not to approve it. We have no authority to do so. We're not a permitting agency. We are not a regulatory agency in any way, shape, or form. The law that was signed by then Governor Snyder, approved by the legislature, is what approved this tunnel agreement, and we ended up approving it as an authority and moving forward. But our purview is not to approve a tunnel, it's to make sure that it's done right for the people of the state of Michigan. So well said. So with that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
All right, thank you all for coming. I will support that motion, and be well out there. Take care.
Agreed.